we had a talk, on YouTube. It was quite a lot of people watching that, and they all also reached out to me, And what I love so much about you is that you talk how we should talk as entrepreneurs. Remove all these roles and titles, and that's what the struggle I have with big corporates is actually that they are so role fixated that the human becomes second, right? And that is what I criticize them so much, actually, is that the Agile Manifesto was written in 2001, and they said it's like people first, process second, technology last. And for some reason, these big corporates think it's process first, technology second, and people last. It annoys me so much. Now, I'm the guy
Yeah.
that lectured for Red Hat Summit about this digital culture. That you've been saying this for a lot of time, like the human in the middle, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. So I leave it over to you, Chris. I hope to have you on Empowering Monday soon. Thank you, my friend.
Sounds good. So Empowering Monday sounds good. So look,
Yeah.
I'm gonna share just a really short conversation, a group of conversations that I've been having with CEOs lately, and there's a real segue to what Rocio talked about around happiness, and not just for ourselves, but in the organizations that we lead. But also, Eduardo, there's a real link, and you'll see what I mean in a minute, to the conversations we've had around our experience around, burning out as an entrepreneur and the stress that causes, and then, in a contemporary way now, how we have this completely different shift and a passion for family and getting the right balance. And the conversation really is around, I suppose it's all my conversations are going to be based around my last book, Building a Culture of Innovation, because that's why leaders and CEOs ask me to go into organizations. But if we look at innovation as a core topic, we know that innovation is at the top of the strategic agenda, whether you're a startup, whether you're a scale up, whether you're a fully fledged 50, 60-year-old corporate. And it's been at the top of the agenda and a strategic priority for years now. But to your point a minute ago, Eduardo, despite the vast spend on tools and canvases and frameworks and opening innovation labs and accelerators, the conversations I have are still around most corporates and most senior leaders being unhappy with the return on that investment in innovation. And the reality is, it's because out of all of that focus and that quest for innovation, we forgot the most fundamental part of organizations, and that's people. And I've seen corporates, buy frameworks and canvases and tools and set up labs, and yet they still haven't really nailed leadership, and they still haven't really nailed culture. So we ask people in our organizations to do their job, to hit targets, to work longer, to work harder. And then on top of all of that, oh, but can you also innovate, please? We want them to be creative on top of all of that. And as leaders, we're still not creating the right environment for innovation and creativity to thrive. And I had a conversation a few days ago with a group of CEOs, and we unpacked Gallup's State of Global Workforce Survey. And the findings in that survey are very, very inconvenient. It's what I call the inconvenient truth. And the inconvenient truth of that findings are that 60% of workers are emotionally detached from work, and 19% of workers are miserable. So when we go back to listening to Rocio talk about happiness, whether it's us as individuals or the people that we lead, as leaders, we're obviously not getting things right if people are detached and miserable. And then one of the most significant bits of that research that I think is really important is workplace stress has now started to, the evidence of workplace stress is making its way into our homes and into our lives. And a German study found that 51% of actively disengaged workers say that job stress has caused them to behave poorly with loved ones. So we're now taking the stress of work back home. And that Gallup survey also concluded that the cause of burnout and all of that stress was a result of, and I quote, unmanageable workload, poor communication, lack of management support, and unreasonable time pressure. And yet, amongst all of that, we want people to be creative and we want them to innovate. Now, all of those things have one thing in common, or two things, I suppose, but the core thing they have in common is leadership. And the core thing that leaders still aren't doing is building the right culture for innovation and creativity to survive. And then we look at the flip side of that. And the flip side, all the data suggests that 95% of people who say they are thriving at work because of great leadership and great culture say that they report, they're treated with respect all day, every day. And 87% of those people say that they smile and laugh a lot while they're at work. Well, that's happiness, that's fun, right? And what do those things have in common? They also have leadership and culture in common. Bad environments which cause stress are as a result of poor leadership and poor culture. Great environments where people have fun at work and deliver against purpose are the result of leadership and culture. Now, if we make this personal, think about this as from a leadership perspective and a culture perspective, and think about the leadership and the culture that we create at home. As leaders, would you subject your children to unmanageable workload, poor communication, no support, and unreasonable time pressure? No, we wouldn't. I've got two daughters, and Eduardo and I talk about family all the time. What I want for my daughters are things like, I want them to be individuals. I want them to be inspired by many, many different things. I want them to feel as though they can contribute to things that they feel are important, that align with their values, the things that they believe in. I want them to find their purpose. But I also want them to get things wrong. And it's counterintuitive, but I want them to feel some pain. I want them to take risks and try new things, because I want them to fail every now and again, not all the time, but I want them to fail so that they understand what that's like, because I want them to learn. But most of all, and this aligns with what Rocio said, most of all, I want them to be happy. But for me, them being happy needs them to do those things. It needs a bit of pain, a bit of risk, a bit of belief, a bit of values. And my job as a dad is to create an environment where the leadership and the culture and the environment at home allows them to do all things and become those people. Now, if workplace stress can find its way home because of poor leadership, I suggest that the reverse is possible, i.e., the happiness we create at home and the environment we create at home and the leadership that we bring home and we show our children and the culture and the atmosphere that we create at home, I suggest that can do the reverse and make it into the workplace. But as leaders, I suggest that's the fundamental definition of our job, building and leading a culture where people can learn, deliver against purpose, thrive, take some risk, probably fail. That's our job. And in my line of work, that means, the title of my last book, Building a Culture of Innovation, all of those things are required. They're all necessary ingredients. So what I'd like to finish with is a question, as a leader, ask yourself, would your children be happy working in your company? Would they be inspired by you and your leadership team? Would the culture in your organization allow them to thrive, to become the best of themselves, to take risk, to be creative, to innovate, or to contribute to innovation? Or would they be disengaged? Would they risk burning out because of the pressure of workload and time and lack of support? And would they bring that negativity and stress back to your home? Building a culture of innovation for me means being able to scale innovation capability. And in the world that we now must operate in, building that capability, building that innovation culture is mission critical. And more than ever, it requires great leadership and great culture. Thank you.
I could listen all day to you, Cris. You know, like we need to do an empowering Monday again with you, you and me, man. We have these talks. Like I really enjoyed. And you taught me something valuable is that you need to have patience, Eduardo. It will take time, but the change will come, right? It's actually happening as we speak. I remember I entered big corporate to try my wings 2014. I asked them, I was mentored by big entrepreneurs, like culture-minded people that always said, or people are our biggest asset. So then I asked big corporate, I said, so how do you work with values here? They're like, yeah, Eduardo, here is the project. And I was like, what project? And then they give me this brochure. It says the company's values. And I was like, what is that? They said, it's the project, Eduardo. We already did it. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, we're talking about one of the biggest, you could say, companies in their area, right? And I went, what do they do an MBA? Like, do they read good to great? Have they read the research? Come on, like motivational factors. So this is what amazes me, Cris, is that there's still so much work at doing, and you are put in the ground, my friend. Chris Dyer, Dane Thoma, I could name drop all day long. And I'm doing my contribution, the book Digital Culture, coming out in Silicon Valley, where I focus actually on the digital tribe, you could say, because they are so misunderstood in like fintech, like run by economic people that don't understand engineers, my friend. So they don't know how to build a proper employer branding, you know. So that's what I want to establish, you know. So I hope that you, me, Dane Thoma, Chris Dyer, all this, Enrique Acosta can come together next year in a big event, my friend, to give it all, right? The red line, I would say, the red line is culture, my friend. It's leadership culture, innovation culture. It's all about culture, my friend. I love that. It's a beautiful word. I need to tattoo it or something.